This is Peak Earth. I'm Case Bradford. Thank you for tuning in to this episode with Kiera Lea. Really enjoyed this conversation with Kiera, learning more about her story. It really resonated with me as well. We were both catalyzed during lockdowns. Her experience was much more intense, being in medical school in Australia and now being a passionate proponent of quantum health. If you don't know what quantum health is, you will learn more about it in this conversation. To give a brief overview, a summarize, it's based around mitochondrial health, which is really built upon the foundation of sunshine, sunrise, not wearing sunglasses, not wearing sunscreen, decentralized health away from the medical system. How can we heal ourselves? And this is a topic that I'm passionate about. Kiera does a great job explaining it, and there will be links down below where you can connect with Kiera and her solar culture retreats and Quantum Health Academy. She's doing great work. I appreciated this opportunity to connect and converse and share this out with everyone listening. Thank you for tuning in. If it's your first time, welcome. If you are a returning listener, welcome back. Really appreciate it. If you'd like to contribute to Peak Earth, you can leave a 5-star review on the Spotify app or the Apple app. That really helps promote this podcast in the algorithm, which is pretty cool. Another way is to share an episode out on social media. And the third way is to have open, honest conversations. There was a moment in this conversation where we talked about the topic of vaccines and lockdowns, and we had spoken prior to hitting record that we didn't really want to get into all that because it was just a little bit played out, but ended up coming up organically, so went with the flow. And I didn't edit it out because I find that I'm enjoying leaving these episodes more raw, just find it more interesting. The first episode I published, it was like an hour-long conversation. It took me 4 hours to edit it because I was cutting out all the ums and ahs, and I just find that it's a lot more interesting now, more of a raw conversation. So I hope that resonates with you, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you. I hope you enjoy this episode with Kiera Lea. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Stoked to connect with you. Really excited to have this conversation. And we were riffing a little bit before we started recording. We just started to jump right into the conversation. And you are currently in Australia. It's the morning of the next day for you. So you're already in October. I'm still in September, but wow, this year has really gone by fast.
Yeah, I just feel like you have to, I don't know where the time's going, but it's going somewhere and I'm not feeling it. So I don't know. They say that as you get older, time moves quicker, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I have felt that myself. And one time I read, there's this really interesting book called The Time Paradox. And in it, the author outlines our perception of time and what makes it go by fast versus what makes it go by slow. And his theory was that novelty makes time goes by a little bit slower. So as we get older, there's less novelty, like we kind of get ingrained in our habits and routines. So our perception of time is unfortunately something that goes by, time zooms by, but I think we can maybe take the reins a little bit by consciously experiencing more novelty or maybe perceiving things as if they were new again.
That's true. So basically we all just need to be little children all the time forever.
It's difficult to manage, but that would be quite the experience. Children are just walking around awestruck all the time. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I just want to pretend I don't have any bills. I don't have to do anything with my life. I'm just going to walk around and just think that every plant that I see is incredible, and I'm a wizard and playing forts again and playing in the mud. I'd really like that, actually. It's a good idea.
I have found a tremendous amount of value in trying to embody that spirit, especially in the realm of looking at things playfully. Like even in this conversation where we're playing in a certain sense, but you can kind of bring that spirit to almost anything. You can, exercise in a playful way, cook in a playful way, have conversations playfully, maybe even work playfully in some ways and joyfully, and really enjoy that might be the best recipe to enjoying life in a real sense.
And that's it, is enjoyment. I have a little nephew. He's almost 3 years old and I love him so much. We've been spending so much time together lately. And children, they just make you slow down and they make you appreciate the present moment. So, I had to train myself to look after him a little bit because I wasn't doing the best job because I'm very much forward thinking. But even something like cooking or hanging out the washing, you just think, oh, okay, I need to quickly get this done so I can, look after my nephew or whatever it is. It's like, no, you bring them along with you and they actually slow the task down so much. So now it's not just about hanging in the washing. It's like, okay, how can we make this fun? How can I enjoy this? Is it I'm going to hang it all a certain way? We're going to play a game with this. And so you become so much more present. And anyone who's a parent will understand what I mean when I'm saying this. I think that's what we need to embody, is actually enjoying everything we do, not acting like everything's a task and we just have to get it done as quickly as possible. Maybe there's enjoyment in those mundane tasks every day.
Kids can be such great teachers, and it really is kind of a shame that so many of us don't have them around. It's because you kind of grow up, become an adult, and then you're just around other adults all the time. Mm-hmm. Very rarely are most of us around older elders, like senior citizens, or children. I think both provide tremendous amount of wisdom if we can maintain that.
Mm-hmm. I think the family unit is so, so important, and something that I really hope to embody in my own life and the choices that I make as I grow up. But I feel like for me, I live in a really, really small beach town. So there's 1,200 people here and it's full of 99% retirees, which is fantastic. I have really cool conversations with them at 6 o'clock in the morning, because retirees are actually all out watching the sunrise and surfing in the morning, believe it or not, living the most quantum life possible. But my mum lives on a farm probably 20 minutes away from me. And so I'm very connected with them. And they're so useful parents. Like, we forget how useful they are. I went to the store the other day and I bought an organic chicken and some parsley and I just dropped it off at my mum's house. And I said, hey, Mum, can you cook this for me? And then she cooked it for me and I went over and I played with my nephew. And then our family members came over and we just seem to live such a solo life now, so disconnected from my family members. But 1, they can be super useful. 2, they have so much knowledge. And 3, that's where so much enjoyment and love comes from. I would hate to get to the end of my life and just think, wow, I was always living for the future and I never actually was able to enjoy my family or be there for the things that matter. We put our children in daycare now and it's like our grandparents are in retirement homes. It's like, why, once upon a time they were back in the home and then they were looking after the children. The children were able to give them light and happiness and laughter, which is so healing. And then the grandparents were instilling their knowledge and being useful for the children as well. We could talk about that topic for so long.
Yes, it's a very deep one and a powerful observation and wisdom that you have to share, given the living situation and experience that you're currently going through. And many are not living like that. Most people that I know here came here to Los Angeles from another place, so their families are thousands of miles away and aren't really connected. The people they're connected with in their network are mostly just people the same age, their peers. So it's a very limited set of perceptions and ideas, and you can get really stuck into a certain mindset and mentality through that. And you do have to be intentional to go and connect with people like very different ages or different idea groups. And I find that recently this past weekend I went and stayed with a friend, and he has a family, three small kids, and it was just like, they're so delightful. Like, every moment they're very aware and things are like brand new for them, and the laughter is a very different frequency from like an adult laughing. Like, laughter of a child is a very different thing from your friend laughing. It's much more vibrational and almost healing at a certain level.
That's so special you're able to do that. Yeah. Children, they just make everything so much better. I just love having them around. I live by myself at the moment and it makes me so sad, because I just feel like even waking up children, they just make your life so much better. But yeah.
There's one thing that you mentioned when you said the retirement community, the community of retirees that you live with, they are up at 6 a.m. surfing, watching the sunrise, living a very quantum lifestyle. For folks who aren't familiar with what that means, how do you describe a quantum lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't really like calling it a quantum lifestyle, because it's really just normal lifestyle. It's how we should all be living and how we were designed to live. We weren't designed to live in these houses that we built around all of these fake lights and eating fake food and having fake friendships and fake relationships and, fake connection online. We were meant to be outside with nature, just like the monkeys and the birds live. That's how we, in my opinion, were meant to be, like, designed to live. And so the retirees here, they are living the quantum lifestyle because they probably they did grow up where there was no Wi-Fi, there was no phone. I mean, I didn't have my first phone until I was 17, so they definitely didn't have them. So that's just life for them. You know, they don't see social media as their main entertainment. They see their main entertainment as talking to their friends and sharing stories and going out surfing in the morning and watching the sunrise. So a quantum lifestyle, what I was referring to, is basically them just being outside all the time. And there's something that you notice about these people. I mean, I used to live in a city when I went to university, and people that were 60 plus, it's not that old actually, they looked very unhealthy. They weren't happy. They were on a handful of medications. And the people here in this town, and it's probably for a lot of reasons, but they're all super, super ripped. Like all the men, they are just like so healthy. They have hair, they're vibrant. They just radiate a glow. They're happy. Yeah, healthy bodies, healthy mind. And I think it really comes from the fact that they're outside, and also probably a little bit because of their retirement. But yeah.
That is something I've come to realize as well through my journey. Nature immersion really is just the foundation of health, and the popular perception of getting healthy is almost always focused on food and exercise. And I agree that those things are certainly important, but the nature immersion, as I like to call it, has just been the number one biggest mover in my health when it comes to it. It's like sunshine, earthing, breathing in fresh air. Like those three factors are how we, and being in wild water if you can. Not everyone has access to an ocean or a river, a lake, a stream, a creek, a puddle, a pond, whatever. Any sort of wild water, like all of that together is the number one mover in my health during my health journey. And so I agree 100% that it's such a important, crucial way to increase health and happiness.
And we can spend so long talking about the science and all the nitty gritty, which I think is important because unfortunately we live in a society where science is the religion, and unless you can prove something through science, no one really listens. So I feel like that's what I bring to the space, is really breaking down the science behind why nature is so supportive of health. But really it's so simple, and it's just this basic, I guess, intuitive knowledge and this belief that nature's not there to harm you. The sun's not there to harm you. God created a world that was so supportive of your function. Or if you believe in evolution, then you believe that as we evolve, so did our environment, and we're in no way separate from each other. And it's this notion that the earth is really supporting you and wants you to become the best that you can possibly be. And so even in terms of, I think you posted something the other day on Twitter, or X, sorry, I get in trouble for calling it Twitter still. You said, I've been asked so much if I'm on taking steroids or something lately. I think you posted that. And it's so funny because I noticed that in myself, and I guess a few of my friends that are male that are working out outside, is that is so supportive of their health and I guess optimal for them. The amount of energy and the amount of health that you get from nature physically and mentally is just beyond the capability of what something like a gym can give you. And I think we've just been taught that to look a certain way, we have to do a certain thing. We have to track our calories and go indoors and, you know, move our muscles this way. But it's just so opposite to how we moved in nature and how we lived, that it's actually harming our health in a way. But yeah, I'll let you go in and ask another question now.
I concur, and it's interesting. I just recorded, so the previous episode will be with Robert Ironshell, who goes by the Grounded Athlete, and he's an expert in earthing and makes these earthing sandals. And he said something very similar to the fact of that we need science to be able to promote and share this. We need to talk about the analytical data to support the healing power of the earth and sunshine. And I agree on some level, but I don't believe that's the only way, because, and this, I've been thinking about it, because some people are very science minded, and for them, they need the science and they'll be comfortable communicating with the science, but not everyone is. Mm-hmm. And some people are more artistic minded, and for them, expressing your love for nature through poetry, through painting, through movement, through whatever comes naturally is equally as powerful and persuasive, I believe. So if you are listening and you're on the same wavelength as us, but you find it struggle to grip the challenge of understanding the science or communicating it to people, I do believe that there are other methods to promote the healing power of nature and just the beauty that comes from being out in the sun, on the earth, in the water. There are other ways to the waterfall. And this is something I've been thinking about because, like you said, science is a religion in the modern day, and it's really difficult to go up against the massive religion that is mainstream science because they have decades of well-funded establishment, and fighting fire with fire can be pretty difficult. But I know you are waging that battle, putting forth the science to say, hey, sunscreen, maybe not maybe not the best idea. Staying inside all the time, avoiding the sun, probably not the best idea. The sun is our friend.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with what you're saying in terms of, all roads lead to Rome. And I think that's where it's so beautiful because we all have such a unique part to play in the movement of this. And we all have different roles to play, and we all appeal to different people and different people's mindsets. And so that's where it comes, that's where I always talking about just expressing yourself on an individualistic level, because you're here for a divine purpose. And you're going to miss that, and you're not going to meet the people you're meant to meet if you're too busy trying to be like somebody else. And so that's why it's really important to tackle these topics in a way that makes sense for you and that really speaks from your heart. My background's in nursing. And so when I found quantum health and I started studying, I didn't find actually anyone in the space until maybe 8 months after I was studying. So I was researching peer-reviewed articles and really just going back through the old literature on my own. And so I was trying to understand this. And I remember just going into the hospital and looking around at all of these people, and it was a very surreal and detached moment where I was looking at all these sick people and I just cried. Honestly, it's a bit embarrassing to, I guess, admit, but I'm a very emotional person. And I just remember crying, and I couldn't stop. I actually couldn't stop. And it's because I realized that all of these people, they didn't have the knowledge that we have. That environment that we have built, that's supposed to be supportive, that's the best environment that we can build for our sickest people to get them better, was actually doing way more harm than good. And in fact, being at home was actually more supportive of their health than being in a hospital. And I realized very quickly that Western medicine, we're really, really good at treating acute injuries. So if I break my foot or if I roll my tractor, I 100% want to be in a hospital and I want to be surrounded by the medical team. But for things like chronic illness, which is the pandemic that we're in, so cardiovascular, neurological, reproductive issues, they're really, really bad at treating that. And then you have to ask the question why. And it's because we don't fundamentally understand what the root cause is, and that lies with our disconnection from nature. And it lies in, the education that our doctors are receiving and the fact that it's based off false pretenses. And whilst they might have good intentions, what about if everything that we actually thought we knew was wrong? And what if we don't just get energy from food? And what if we actually get energy from nature? And so putting someone who has stage 4 double positive breast cancer in a hospital bed around artificial light that actually influences their hormone production and probably is what gave them breast cancer in the first place, disconnected from the ground, which is a source of energy, feeding them fluorinated water. I looked at the back of an NG bag. When people are really, really sick and they can't eat, they get given nasal gastric tubes. And I have a photo actually, I'll send it to you. The first ingredient is actually sunflower oil. That's not supportive of health. And I'm fine for people to seek that treatment if they want it, but there's no informed consent. We need to be telling these people, hey, this is plan C. This is free medical care and this is what we can afford to give you. But really, this is plan A and this is what you should be doing. And there's just not that at the moment. And so it breaks my heart to see that, and especially children. So I feel like using the science to get to those little children laying in those hospital beds through the nurses, through the doctors, by increasing their education is what I'm trying to do with my platform.
That's beautiful. And I think crying is the really correct response, because it is absolutely heartbreaking and tragic what is currently happening to sick people, especially knowing what we know about the path to health as it really truly is, which is a holistic approach to activating our natural healing systems. We can't regenerate without nature, without access to sunshine, fresh air, bare feet on the earth for that electromagnetic energy that really powers every cell in our body to do its thing, to clean house and to keep us vibrantly happy, healthy, and without those fundamental pieces in place, everything kind of falls apart.
That's exactly right. And, I can get really upset and cranky sometimes online because I see people always arguing about little things. But I feel like every time I get trapped in that cycle, I just think back to my time in the hospital, and I remember my mission and why I'm here. And I think we all need to think of that more and keep that in mind. Like, we're all here on the same team. We're all trying to do the same thing. We all have our role to play, but ultimately, we're just wasting time. But yeah, it's sad because I feel like when you reach a certain capacity like we have, it's really easy to get trapped in a silo and think that everyone knows this stuff, but they don't. You only have to walk down a main street of your town and look around to know that people don't understand this at all. And it's a long road for them. And, everyone talks about how sick the world is at the moment. And I believe that it's not stemmed from a disruption in our physical health. I think our soul's actually sick. And so it might have taken our physical health to make us wake up. But I think that was a really important stepping stone. And then once we have our health, we start to see things in a different light. But I'm really looking forward to the next few years and seeing what we can accomplish. I'm really, I don't know about you, but I felt the energy change recently, and I'm so hopeful for the future and seeing the world move towards more of a holistic mindset when it comes to health and wealth and all the things.
I agree. I'm very optimistic and excited to see more of these ideas catch hold in people's minds, because we can build a really flourishing future. We can create a much cooler world as people begin to get healthy and become more vital and more creative and more happy. The entire everything about the world will begin to shift and change. A lot of it is just downstream of health in so many ways. It's just such a drag on our entire system. Every aspect of our civilization is being weighed down by the weight of this chronic disease, which, as we both believe, is a disconnection from nature. And quantum health is I am no expert in it, but the way I perceive it is it's like a lens of perception to perceive this, the way one can connect with nature and activate health. Is that how do you describe it? I'm sure you have a much better description of it.
I mean, I'm no expert either. I feel like the mark of a good mind is knowing that, the more I know, the more that I know that I know nothing, if that makes sense. And I think that anyone who can sit you down and say, I know everything, I'm a master of everything, and I know everything is lying to you. And you should probably go talk to somebody else. Yeah, so I'm in no way an expert either. I don't think anyone actually is. And if you learn about quantum mechanics, then our perception actually changes things a lot. So we're all masters of our own mind, I guess, in our own reality. We're right. But so quantum health, the way I explain it to people is I just say biochemistry looks at your body through the lens of molecules. And that's the way that it functions, and reactions and energy in versus energy out. But I'm actually looking at your body through the most fundamental lens, through the lens of subatomic particles. So every molecule is made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And so I'm actually looking at that scale, that foundational level of health, which really comes back to positive and negative charge. So we have protons, which are positive charge, electrons are a negative charge. And, if we know anything about a battery, positive and negative, we get energy. And so that's fundamentally what's happening through the body. And when you break down these molecules and you actually start to look at the body through the lens of perhaps semiconduction or energy flow or coherence or entropy, you start to get a very, very different view of the body. And it's really, really hard to unlearn all the things you thought you knew. But ultimately, if you keep studying, everything really makes sense. And you're like, oh, wow, this makes so much sense. And I feel like in university in biochemistry class, I just felt like I was memorizing things. I didn't really understand them. And I'm someone who's always asking the question, why? And my teachers hated it. I was like, but why though? But why does that happen? But why? But how? But why? And they're like, because it just does, Kiera. And I was like, okay, I'll be quiet now. But this is the first time that I've actually said, okay, I understand it now and I know why. And there's no more whys. Well, there's more whys left to ask. But they're a different scale. And so it fundamentally makes sense to me. And it's something that I didn't have to remember or read 100 times or write out, because it just fundamentally just felt so real and honest. And I think it was the first time that I ever actually heard truth. And so, yeah, we're basically looking at energy flow in the body. And the really cool thing is that Western medicine looks at the body looks at the body as if it is closed thermodynamically, which means that the only thing that affects our body is the food that we put in it, and then like movement, exercise, these types of things. And even for most practitioners, the movement and the diet part is still a bit woo-woo. And then you meet quantum health and it just takes it to a whole new level. So it's no wonder why people aren't accepting this yet, maybe in 15 years. But so we actually look at the body as if it's closed open thermodynamically to its environment, which means that the air that's around me, the ground that I'm on, and the sky above me is no way separate from my body. And it's a constant energy transfer. And so if my environment is perhaps stealing energy from me, from being on electronics or being under artificial lighting or never being grounded or touching, these devices all the time, it's actually impacting my body and putting me at an energy deficit. Whereas if I'm outside and there's energy flowing from the ground, this negative charge through electrons into my body, that's actually a source of energy independent of the food that we eat. The light that I'm around, the photons, actually activates those electrons and allows me to utilize that energy. And we can even talk about laughter. We can talk about the people we're around. If you have a higher electron status, so a higher redox, then like let's say your partner, and you touch them for an extended period of time, you're actually going to transfer your energy to them, which we've kind of always known that people can steal our energy, but now we have a little bit more science surrounding it, which is very cool. But yeah, so we're really understanding now that we're connected to our environment, and when you're sick, or even if you're healthy, you just can't address the body. You have to address the body in the environment that it's in.
Beautiful. And that leads into, I guess, what could be termed terrain theory, and a popular way of perceiving health and sickness, looking at the environment someone is in. A popular cartoon about this is a fish in a fish bowl, and the water in that bowl is all dirty and murky, and the caption is something effective like clean the fish bowl instead of giving the fish medication. And we're currently, like you mentioned, we're in this chronic disease epidemic where I think only 10% of people are metabolically healthy. And if you look around, maybe not in certain areas, but overall, if I look around America, it does seem like around 10% of people seem to be healthy. And that's pretty scary. And if you stop to think about why that is, you look and you see, well, our food is polluted, our air is polluted, our water is polluted. Everyone's kind of stuck inside, disconnected from fresh air. Being indoors is almost always a fairly polluted environment, just from the electronics and the paints and the furniture. Unfortunately, just everything's, not exactly, it's not a natural environment, even though that term can be, a little bit dicey to throw out, because it's like everything's natural, but it's not really the way that we're using it here. It's, there's an environment that is more energetic, that you've described. There's sunshine, there's living trees, there's an electromagnetic energy of the earth, and that has a certain energy that we're able to benefit from.
There's life out there, right? And we're part of that life.
So reconnecting back to that cycle, to that system, to that circle can revivify someone. What was your experience reconnecting back to that and learning about this firsthand?
Yeah, of course. So my experience is a little bit different than most, but I grew up on a cattle farm in southeast Queensland, so from like a very rural family and setting, and so I was always living a quantum life. I don't think I ever had clothes on me as a child. As I said, I didn't get a mobile phone until very late in life, and always connected to the earth. If you look at photos of me as a baby, I'm riding my horse. I have no shoes on. I'm just always outside. We got our beef from up the road, and we grew a lot of our food. So that was just my life. And then I grew up, and my granddad said to me, "Do you want to be successful?" And I said, yes. He said, "Well, then study hard, get a degree, and go to university." And so I did just that. My life smarts, I don't know about that so much, but I'm very academically gifted. I have a picture perfect memory, which is very cool. And so academics has been my thing. So I did very, very well in school, went on to do university. I studied a Bachelor of Psychological Science, realized that talk therapy wasn't healing, and it actually often caused more issues than what it made. And so I started looking at different avenues to go down. I looked at nutrition, I looked at healthcare, I looked at becoming a doctor, and I was looking at the program outlines of those, and I just thought it's all policy and procedure, and I'm paying $50,000 for a course that's just teaching me bookwork, and then there might be 3 courses in that I actually like biochemistry or anatomy. So I decided to be a nurse so then I could help people. And then it got to the end of that, and COVID happened, and I decided, all of the things happened here in Australia that happened, and so it was illegal for me to be on placement and become a nurse unless I got vaccinated. And I thought, well, that's not for me, which is very interesting because I didn't have any reason to disagree with centralized medicine at this point. I was very centralized in thinking. I thought, you get a degree, you buy a house, you have a family, that's life and that's success. But now I know that that's not what success is at all. So COVID was actually the best thing that happened to me and really did save me. So I lost my job. I wasn't allowed to study anymore. I was also working at the university, mentoring first-year students. So I got that taken away from me when I decided not to get the vaccine. And then you said you didn't want to talk about vaccines, didn't you? You might
That's
have to
all right,
cut it out.
I can always cut it out if we want, but I know that personally it's I don't mind so much that it's a controversial topic. It's for me, it's just something that has been, I'm sure you're probably a little bit sick of like talking about it or thinking about it at this point, because it was such a stressful experience for so many people, and really, and for you, it sounds like it was maybe even a potentially a traumatic level experience, because it could have probably carried so much of a charge and a stress and in the situation that you were in and the place that I put you. And what I find really interesting is that it ended up being a catalyst for a tremendous amount of positive growth in your life. And you're not the first person to tell a story like this on this podcast. And across the world, this was a massive catalyst for a lot of people to an awakening of sorts, or even just a tremendous challenge. And through challenge comes growth. So it was a really big moment and catalyst where everyone was able to sort of like question what the heck is going on. And for me, it was a catalyst to start creating on the internet. I hadn't ever really used social media in that way prior to the lockdowns and the pandemic. And I knew at that point I had some understanding of health and well-being, and I started sharing it because it's like, hey, maybe I could help somebody if just it doesn't cost me much to create something on the internet, and it's pretty fun. So it's a similar story. We have similar stories through that, although not the same, but definitely a catalyst for me as well. And I think a lot of people listening that it will resonate with as well.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on autopilot now because every podcast that I do, everyone seems to want to know how I got to where I am and how that went for me and all of these things. But I feel like that's such a big part of what I stand for, is the fact that it is okay to question things. And I'm always talking about faith, and sometimes you don't need to know where you're going, but as long as you have a good heart and you have good intentions, everything will work out. And people say, and I was one of these people, I thought, if I leave my career, I'm not going to make it. Like, am I going to have employment? Am I going to be happy? Am I going to be safe? And yes, the answer to all of those questions is yes. And so if you're a young woman listening to this, you are capable of so much more than you think you are. The only thing stopping you is yourself. You have to have faith, and you have to step out, and you have to do the work. And if you do that, you'll be fine. You don't have to stay in a system or a place just because you're scared of risk. And if there's no risk, then there's no reward. So I feel like that's why I bring it up so much. But basically, that all happened to me and will happen for me now that I know. And I moved back home to the country from the city, and I got my health right. And I got my health right, not from food, but from going outside and reconnecting with the earth and building my redox and getting the sun and getting the UV light. And I found it so healing, not only for my physical health, but for my mental health. And I feel like I had a raise in my vibration, a raise in my redox, and I just started looking at the world through a different lens, and I started to see the world for what it was. I was like, oh my gosh, we live in these silly houses and we have all these silly rules and we do all these things this way and no one's happy. Why isn't anyone happy? And I didn't want my life to be like that. And so Yeah. I think I always tell people, I said, if you don't know where to start, just start by watching the sunrise and getting outside, and the rest usually takes care of itself.
Beautiful. It is a fascinating backstory, and stories carry so much power, especially our own personal experience and life story, because it really does reveal the nature of reality in some ways, and our character. And people can really learn from that, I think, potentially more than they can from specific facts and figures and ideas that others have discovered and shared. But I do believe there are some important ideas and facts and figures that have been discovered and shared. And one of them, I think, that could be really helpful for people would be the power of sunrise. You mentioned waking up and seeing the sunrise. Why is that so cool?
Well, it's beautiful. Have you seen the sunrise? Well, it's beautiful. I mean, I wake up and I'm so excited. I'm like, is it going to be rainy? What color is the sunrise going to be today? It starts my day off on such a positive note. But really, if we're looking at the science, there's so much healing benefits of sunrise, and that's because of the fact that the sun is actually a nutrient and we're all deficient in it. And so it produces sunlight, which is energy for us, but also infrared light. Now, infrared light comes from these beautiful red light panels, yes, but it also comes from the sun. 47%, I believe, or 42% of all sunlight all the time is infrared light. We just can't see it. Our body uses this light to do lots of things. It's really healthy for our mitochondria. And our mitochondria are energy. They produce energy in lots of different ways, through our exclusion zone water, through heat, through a proton gradient, through all of these things. And basically, we just want to be using this infrared light to really support our mitochondria to do its job. And if we're indoors all the time, which we all are, and we're never getting up in the morning because we're all so tired, or we're getting up and we're rolling over and looking at our phone, or God forbid, you're watching the news or something, you're really just so deprived of this infrared light. If 42% of all sunlight is infrared, that's a pretty clear indication that we're meant to have that light and it's doing something for our body. And so in the morning, because a lot of the other wavelengths get scattered and they don't make it to Earth as such, this infrared is just so abundant. It's signaling to our body that it's morning. It's telling my body to make exclusion zone water, to make water inside of me to keep me hydrated. And then that water can carry energy through my body. When you're actually grounding in the morning and you're surrounded by the infrared light, it does lots of really cool things. And it's basically, the way that I say it to my clients is, I don't know if you've ever played like Super Mario and you go over the banana and you get like a little speed, you go faster. And like that's what happens in your body when you ground and watch the sunrise at the same time. You get like this little boost of energy. And it has, well, not really the infrared, but as the day progresses and UVA rise comes along and all the different light frequencies become abundant, you make things like serotonin, melatonin. So serotonin makes you feel good. Why would nature do that? It's because God designed us to be addicted to morning sunlight, because he wants us to keep being out there in the mornings. And then obviously melatonin, we need to sleep as well. So if you're not getting outside in the morning, you're not going to make the melatonin that's then going to be released in darkness to sleep and have a healthy, deep, restful sleep and all the things that we need to do. So, one, it's beautiful, but two, it's also extremely healing for you. I think that people's mental health these days is just so fragile, not because of the world just because of the world we live in, but also the environment that we live in. And so when you understand that light, that all of our hormones are quantized, which means driven and controlled by light, perhaps being around this fake man-made light that doesn't change and it's the same all the time is actually detrimental to our mental health. And when we get outside and we have those light frequencies in our eyes controlling our hormones in a natural fashion, that's extremely healing.
Tremendous. And it makes me think of a lot of things, but one is when people say the sun is dangerous or the sun is risky. Mm-hmm. The first thought, I think, in everyone's mind should be, well, what about the sunrise? And there's really no risk at all in that period. And it's an enormous amount of benefit, as you just described, aside from the fact that it's visually beautiful and it's nourishing on a soul level to see such spectacular beauty. You've got the infrared light and it's creating water inside of you for hydration, which is amazing. And it's setting up your neurochemistry for a better experience of life, which is beautiful. And you'd be insane to be putting on sunscreen during a sunrise, because the sun isn't, you're not going to get a sunburn from being outside in the sun in the morning, even if you're never in the sun. And then you've got the different stages of the sun. So as the sun rises, it gets hotter, and you're getting more of the that solar power on your skin. But in the morning, really such an amazing time. And if we think about why it's so hard to get up in the morning for most people, it's because they're watching the TV at night, which is like this double whammy where you've got the blue light at night, or the electronic light, affecting your sleep, so you don't sleep as well, and then you can't get up to see the morning sun. So that's such an amazing pivot that people could make, which would massively impact health in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're quite young, it doesn't really take that long for these things to have such a big impact on your body and your brain and how you're feeling. I mean, blocking the artificial light at nighttime, getting up in the morning. I mean, it's quite hilarious when you think of this. I think of myself as a teenager, and no wonder why I didn't want to get up. I had blackout curtains. My room was cold. My body was getting all the signals of it's nighttime, like you should be asleep. Whereas if you actually get outside, open up your windows, you'll find that you actually become awake quite quickly, and your body starts to build this circadian rhythm where you do wake up at the same time every day. Sometimes it can be quite frustrating because I'll feel like sleeping in or something. But my body's like, no, sorry, you're awake. It's 4:30 in the morning. It's time to get up and get outside. And I'm like, really? Like today's just wanted to sleep in, but that's how it works. So, and I feel like, it's such a big problem in today's society is like waking up, not feeling good. And then when you understand what this artificial light's doing to your brain at nighttime and depleting the melatonin, which affects every other process in your body, and, as you said before, cleaning house, making sure, you're waking up. The way that I explain it is, my grandmother always taught me, now, Kiera, every night before you go to bed, it's really, really important to do your dishes, wipe down all of your tables, and put the dishwasher on. So that when you wake up, you're waking up to a really nice, clean kitchen, and it's a really good way to start the day. And I think about this the same way I think about artificial light, is if you're around artificial light at nighttime, you're not going to do the dishes, which means you're not going to take out all of those bad cells and all those toxins in your brain. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're feeling not great because you've woken up and you haven't cleaned house the night before. And I feel like that's a really good visual representation of what's actually happening inside of us.
That is really good. A great way to imagine your inner dishwasher, getting things in order, cleaning things up, and getting you prepared for a beautiful day the following day. And I've seen you write about UV rise before, and I think this is something that is definitely esoteric. Not too many people know about UV rise, but super interesting and powerful. Would you mind elaborating on what that is all about for listeners?
Yeah, of course. So the sun, it has all these different frequencies. We just see illumination. So we go outside and it's sunny, God bless. But it really is made up of all these different frequencies, and these frequencies are changing all the time. So as we said already, in the morning, it's like a lot of infrared, red frequencies. As we go through the day, there's more blue light, more UV light. Obviously, that makes you burnt. But so if you download an app called Circadian Life, it actually tells you when these different frequencies come in. But we all live busy lives, so we can't really be outside all the time, unfortunately. But there are some key frequencies that you do need to get. So sunrise is one of them. And then UVA rise and also UVB rise are the next ones. So UVA is really, really cool because the UVB one is the one they tell you to stay away from and the one that gives you cancer. But the UVA, that's what works with a lot of your neurotransmitters. And it's actually, you can tan in UVA as well. So if you're someone who's been avoiding sunlight for a long time, you need to build a solar callus. You actually have to prep your skin to handle these frequencies. I mean, the reason we get sunburn is because we're inside all the time. We're eating inflammatory foods. And then one day in the middle of summer, our friend says to us, hey, let's go to the beach. It's so hot. We go outside. Our body is like, I didn't know that it was the middle of summer. I've had the aircon on. I've had my sunglasses on. I've had sunscreen on. I didn't even know that it was hot outside. What on earth? I haven't produced the melanin or done the things that I need to do to be able to handle this amount of light. And so obviously we're going to fry like a potato chip. And we see all these people laying on the beach with their sunglasses on, which is blocking the UV as well, because you need the UV through your eyes to prep your body and then the UV on your skin to actually chop up the chemicals needed to make a tan, right? Which is what protects you against UV, any possible damage. So anyway, you can produce that tan just from UVA rise. So if you're scared of getting UVB, get a ton of UVA, which where I live, it comes up 1 hour after sunrise. So I stay out all morning until 15 minutes after UVA. Then I come home and I make some breakfast. So that's, if you're someone who's scared of sunlight, that's a beautiful place to start. And then the UVB, well, sometimes it doesn't even rise near you, depending on where you are and what your location is and what season it is. But then the UVB is also really, really important. So you want to be building your way up to getting that as well.
Fascinating. So a lot to touch on there. One thing I'd like to describe is that when you said sunburn, you put quotation marks up. So anyone watching this on YouTube will have seen it, but listeners would have missed that part. Why did you put quotation marks when you said sunburn?
Because I don't know. I think it's really silly. I haven't been sunburned in a very long time. I used to get burnt because of the reasons I just described, like eating very inflammatory foods, being dehydrated. Infrared light is our sunscreen. It's the sunrise is the natural sunscreen. We need to be connected. So, for example, I don't want to be tan in winter because what does tan do? It blocks light. In wintertime, there's less light. My body wants to absorb as much light as possible, and so it removes that tan. So now I can get as much light into my skin as possible. And then in summertime, we get this beautiful, beautiful tan to kind of balance out that increased sun exposure. But if I'm not outside giving my body that signal of, okay, I'm going from winter and it's slowly going to get hotter and the UV is slowly going to increase, my body just doesn't have the chance to do what it's meant to do and slowly build that tan to get to the peak of summer and then move back down as it gets to winter. And so I put sunburn in quotation marks because I actually think it should be called something along the lines of, I don't know, silly indoor living burn. I don't know, something like this, because it's really not the sun that's burning us. It's the silly decisions that we make in life that makes the sun burn us, if that makes sense.
It does. It's almost like the sunburn isn't really caused by the sun. It's actually more caused by our avoidance of the sun. It's like a mark of sun deficiency in a way.
Exactly. It's really caused by, if someone's sunburned, I know that they are not outside as much as they should be. And they're eating, probably very inflammatory foods, seed oils, all things.
Yeah, that's an important part too. I was watching. This is a very controversial topic for a lot of some listeners. May be like, what are they talking about? And other people will be like, probably already agreeing with most of what we're saying, if not all of it, based on what they've come across and the presence of seed oils, because I believe it's the linoleic acid or the the makeup of the fats in these evil oils, as they're occasionally called, and these make our skin more susceptible to being burned by solar rays and can also lead to higher incidence of skin cancer. And saying those things are purely caused by the sun is really silly when we are looking at it at a deeper level or from a holistic point of view, as you've described. Seeing the sunrise, super powerful way to protect your body from rays that are a little bit more intense later in the day.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have to think, my heritage is from Ireland. My dad does have dark skin. So I have this nice melanated skin. So I'm well designed to be in Australia. But for most of us, we're not from, we don't look like Aboriginal people in Australia. They have dark skin because the sun's so high here. We don't. Like even the people in Tasmania, like the natives that are closer to the pole, they had extremely, extremely dark skin. So it's like, I'm not designed from an evolutionary standpoint to be in Australia. It's not my home. It's not what my body's designed for. And it's not like our body can just adapt in 1 or 2, 3, 4 generations. It takes a long time for our mitochondria to change and adapt to suit our new location. And so it's something you have to think about. And, when you're, I don't know, what can I use an example for Australians that might be listening? When kangaroos, they have too much sun, what do? They go and they jump over underneath a tree in the shade and they lay down, and that's what they do, and they have some water. And that's what they don't put sunscreen on and sunglasses on and a hat on and clothes on and then go continue to lay in the sun. They just go and they seek nature's sunscreen, which is the shade. And so if you're from like Irish descent, like my family is, then perhaps maybe you just want to seek the shade and you don't need as much UVB as somebody else. Which from a mitochondrial standpoint, you don't have as many vitamin D receptors in your mitochondria, so you don't actually need as much either. But I think that's something that people always bring up. So I'll touch on it. The fact that, we're not really designed to be in the places that we are now either. But it still doesn't mean you should wear glasses and sunscreen.
That's an amazing point. And it can also, even if you aren't living in like a tropical location or a place where there's really high UVs, like Los Angeles, if you're in America, or even places like New Zealand or Australia where there are higher UVs. Maybe you're on vacation in Costa Rica and you think, I don't eat any seed oil, so I'm going to go surf all day in the middle of the day. You still might get a little too much sun and be a little sun kissed from that because you weren't listening to your body's signals to say, spend some time in the shade during the middle of the day. It can still be some intense sun rays coming down, and again, it being a little sun. I also don't like calling it a sunburn because I think mentally that makes it a little bit more intense than it probably really is over the long term. Just if you get a little sun kissed, you just stay in the shade. Put some tallow on there if you have it. Coconut oil with some aloe vera is great. But you also mentioned something important there, which I do want to make sure we spend a little time riffing on, which are sunglasses. Those are really popular. A lot of people wear sunglasses, but why would that be maybe inadvisable?
On I guess, an easy to understand level, we have light receptors in our eyes, and we also have light receptors on our skin. And our body, it doesn't actually tell time or our environment, depending on what we're talking about, through our consciousness. So like my consciousness can tell, where I am, the time, the date, all these types of things, what's happening in my environment, just by looking at my computer or, Googling what season am I in right now. My body doesn't know that. It has to actually get this information from the light and from my electromagnetic environment. And so if you're wearing your sunglasses, you're actually detaching that information from your body. And so, as I said before, you need the UV light in your eyes to interact with POMC so that then the light on our skin can actually signal to have that POMC chopped up to make the tan that we need to make. And if you don't have those two surfaces exposed, this process doesn't happen. Or it can actually happen if you have sunglasses on, but nowhere near as efficiently as what it should be. And so there's so many examples of this in science, and how disconnecting, I guess, the reality that your body sees from the reality that your eye sees just creates so much chaos internally. But basically, we just need to think about our body as one big solar panel, and we want it all to be coherent, which means we want it to all be sensing the same environment, which means we don't want any electromagnetic equipment because we use electromagnetism to sense our location as well. We don't want AirPods, we don't want sunglasses, we don't want sunscreen. I'm a big advocate for wearing tallow, and this is my personal experience or opinion as well. At nighttime, I'm not a big fan of putting it on and then going into the sun. You don't want really to block. You don't even want to be wearing clothes, really. I still wear clothes, obviously. I'm not telling you to go be naked and get arrested or something. But you just want your body to be as coherent with your natural environment as possible. So that includes, taking away all the silly things we designed and buy and put on ourselves.
Excellent. And to summarize, the sunglasses are going to make you more susceptible to sunglasses. Bad. We'll make the sun less healing and potentially a little bit risky and damaging. And
I would be worried. I would actually say that avoiding the sun is probably better for you if you're going to wear sunglasses and sunscreen and go be out in the sun.
Because our eyes, it's our brain. It's an extension of our brain. And letting that sunlight into our brain tells our whole body, hey, it's sunny. Let's prepare for that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And as you said, we make different hormones. You can actually almost make the argument that different aromatic amino acids are actually just full of stored sunlight. So, we haven't even begun to understand. And this is why I don't know if it was on this episode or before we were talking, anyone that says they know everything, they actually know nothing. We haven't even begun to understand the way that light influences our biology. We have such a good idea and we can make really good educated guesses, but a lot of the research hasn't been done yet. And perhaps maybe we will never know. And so just understanding that being outside is really, really good for you and being inside is not so good for you is all you really need to know.
Yes, that's so important, and prioritizing sunrise, UV rise in the morning, super important, and at night, really limiting the amount of bright light that we come in contact with. Once the sun sets, just keeping your living quarters as dark as possible, really important for sleep. So having that routine ritual of darkness after the sun sets, and then getting outside as soon as you can to enjoy the sunlight, that is it's hard to put into words how much of a shift that can have in someone's health, but it really is so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's beautifully said.
And this is really just scratching the surface of everything that you know and share. And you've created the Quantum Health Academy to dive deeper into all this and to share your knowledge with everyone who's listening, everyone who's interested. Why did you create this, and what is it all about?
Yeah, so the Quantum Health Academy is probably the most important thing I've done in my life. It really just aligns with my mission, and it's such an extension of my values, and allows me to do everything that I want to do in life. And so a big problem that I had is I got invited to go talk at Dr. Jack Cruise's event, Age of Light. And then after that, I pretty much became booked out instantly with client consults. And I remember talking to my really good friend, Dr. Jalal Khan, and I said, I'm so exhausted. I was getting up at 3 a.m. and I was finishing at 10 p.m. and I was just doing back-to-back client consults, like 7 days a week, pretty much. Talking to my clients every week. You know, you have 10 clients, you see them every week, things start to fill up pretty quickly, and then you're doing all the extra client work and talking to other doctors and researching, and my life was just so busy that I started to become unwell again. And I said, I just can't keep doing this, but I can't turn people away because they're so sick and they really need help. And he said, well, I guess we better train some practitioners. And so we put our heads together. We started with an 8-week course, and then it went to 3 months, and now we've capped it at 10 months. And it really just explains how our body actually functions when it's in a natural environment, the deep science behind all the science that's currently available behind how to treat different disorders with natural remedies rather than pharmaceuticals and supplements, and just really delving deeper down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I'm really excited for that, because I'm not just excited for the education because it's aimed at medical professionals. So we're talking to universities at the moment to have that accredited, which is really cool. So hopefully we can start to get doctors to take that, because updating textbook, it takes 15 to 20 years. So the stuff that we learn now, our doctors won't be learning for 20 years. So hopefully this will be a way to catalyze that area. And also through the academy as well, I know when I was a young coach, one of the biggest barriers to health for my clients was the fact that they were living in a city and maybe they needed a red light panel, or maybe they needed to go take a break, or maybe they were living in New Zealand and it's the middle of winter and I don't know if they're actually going to make it to the next summer. So they have to maybe come over to Australia. And that's a really, really expensive process for people, because as we know, a lot of these modalities aren't actually covered by healthcare or insurance. So through the Quantum Health Academy, the people that actually come out of that can apply to us to have us actually fund those things for their clients and compensate them for time if perhaps their client's not in a position to pay for that. So they're not doing so much, free work, which is what a lot of young, passionate people in the industry do because they just are so passionate about what they do. We can give scholarships to people who want to study this in more depth but perhaps can't afford it. And then we can also start to make, community events more accessible for people. So I'm a bit tired at the moment because it's really exhausting and it's a lot of work. But we start teaching in February, and yeah, I'm just so excited to see where it takes us and what we can do.
Beautiful. Well, I'm really grateful that I had the chance to connect with you and have this conversation. I really enjoyed it, and really admire and appreciate the work that you do to put this information out there and to create this academy and everything that you will, I'm sure, accomplish and continue to do. It's amazing work, and appreciate you taking the time to connect with me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
No, thank you so much for having me. And as I said, I appreciate the work that you do as well. Every time you pop up on my feed, I just feel like this overwhelming feeling of happiness.
Beautiful. I appreciate that. And for everyone listening, links to the Quantum Health Academy will be down below, along with everywhere to find Kiera and connect with her. Kiera Lea, thank you.
No worries. Bye.